"Get out!" she screamed, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I stood there on the front porch, my breath coming in sharp bursts, holding a duffel bag that sagged with the weight of everything I managed to grab in 3 minutes. The porch light flickered overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow. I looked back once, stupidly thinking she might come after me. She didn't. The cold bit through my sweatshirt. I didn't have a car anymore. Sold it 2 weeks ago to cover rent. I started walking. I don't even remember choosing a direction. Hours passed. My legs burned. Every few blocks I would pass late-night diners, closed stores, couples laughing as they ducked into cabs. I kept moving, one foot numb after the other. "Yo, you okay, man?" A voice called from behind me. I turned to see a guy in a long coat standing outside a 24-hour laundromat. He had a plastic bag in one hand and a cigarette in the other. "I'm fine," I said, voice hoarse. "You don't look fine." He took a drag, studying me. "You running from something?" "Not running. Just done." He nodded like he understood. "Name's Walt," he said, sticking out a hand. I hesitated, then shook it. His hand was rough, calloused. "Listen," Walt said, exhaling smoke. "I know a place. Not fancy. Might help you catch your breath." I didn't answer. I didn't want anyone's charity. But my body betrayed me, tilting slightly toward him like a beaten dog. "Suit yourself," he said, tossing the cigarette to the curb. "I'll be there for the next hour. 8th and Burnside." He walked off without looking back. I stood there for what felt like a lifetime. The night deepened. My fingers went stiff. Pride is a heavy thing to carry when your body is giving out. I started walking again, toward 8th and Burnside. When I found the place, it looked abandoned. Boarded windows, a battered community room sign dangled by one chain. I almost turned around, but Walt was sitting on the stoop, waiting, arms crossed. "Thought you might show." He pulled a ring of keys from his coat pocket, jiggled them until one fit. The door groaned open. Inside, the air smelled like old wood and dust. A few folding chairs, a table with half-dead plants, and a row of cracked vending machines blinking sporadically. Walt flicked on a bare bulb overhead. "A few of us crash here," he said. "Nobody asks questions. You don't steal, you don't mouth off, you get to stay." I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. He tossed me a blanket from a pile in the corner. "You can grab that couch." I lay down, the springs creaking under me. Walt dropped into a chair across the room, pulled out a battered paperback, and started reading like I wasn't even there. For the first time in what felt like years, I let the exhaustion swallow me whole. The dust swirled around the broom like tiny ghosts. My arms ached, but I kept sweeping. Walt sat nearby, sipping burnt coffee, watching but saying nothing. "You missed a spot," he said after a while, pointing with his mug. I clenched my teeth but went back over it. Every fiber in me wanted to throw the broom across the room, to yell, to quit. But something held me there, the raw, humiliating truth that I had nowhere else to go. After an hour, Walt stood up, stretched, and tossed me a set of keys. "You want a shower? The Y 2 blocks down lets you in for $3 if you tell em you're with St. Mark's Outreach." I caught the keys clumsily. "You coming with?" I asked. He shook his head. "If you can't figure out how to find a shower, you won't figure out much else." He said it without cruelty, just fact. Out on the street, the sun was a harsh, exposing light. People rushed past me like I was invisible. I kept my head down, found the YMCA, got cleaned up. Under the scalding water, the grime of the last 3 days ran off me in rivulets. I leaned my forehead against the tile, letting the water pound against my back, and tried not to cry. When I returned, Walt was still there, playing solitaire. "Cleaned up good," he said. "Now," he said, laying down a card. "Tell me what broke you." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Finally, I muttered, "I don't know who I am anymore." "Good," Walt said. "Means you're ready." "For what?" "Ready to start from zero." He handed me a notebook and a pencil. "First lesson. You clean where you live. Second, you write. Every damn day." That night, I wrote my first words. I am lost. The next morning, Walt woke me up before dawn by tossing a rolled-up sock at my head. Up, he said. Time to work. Bleary-eyed, I stumbled after him into the cold, empty streets. He moved fast for a man his age, weaving through alleys and side roads until we ended up behind a bakery. He pounded once on the back door. A small, wiry woman in an apron answered. She gave me a quick once-over, then jerked her head toward a stack of crates. You want breakfast, you unload those. No hello. No explanations. I set to work. The crates were heavier than they looked, filled with sacks of flour and trays of eggs. My arms screamed with every lift, but I kept my mouth shut. Walt sat on a milk crate, watching with that same unreadable expression. After what felt like hours, the woman handed me a paper bag dripping with grease. On the house, she said gruffly. Inside was a still warm breakfast sandwich. I devoured it without a second thought. Walt finally spoke. World don't owe you a thing, Chris. You want something, you earn it. He led me back to the community room in silence. My legs ached. My hands blistered. That afternoon, he dropped a battered phone book in front of me. Pick a meeting. Meeting. AA, doesn't matter. You pick one. You go. I don't have a problem. I snapped, heat rising to my face. Walt's eyes bored into me. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just need a place to tell the truth. Either way, you're going. I slammed the book shut, but later that night, after Walt had fallen asleep in his chair, I flipped it open again. I circled a listing, 7 p.m., St. Bridget's church basement. I almost didn't go. I sat outside the church for 20 minutes, heart hammering, palms sweating. Finally, I forced my feet up the steps and through the door. Inside, a circle of battered folding chairs, coffee brewing in the corner. No one looked twice at me. A man with a gravelly voice opened the meeting. Anybody new or coming back? You're welcome here. My throat tightened. I stayed silent. People started sharing, their stories raw, messy, broken. I sat frozen, listening. Every word felt like a mirror held up to my face. When the meeting ended, a guy with tattoos snaking up his neck clapped me on the shoulder. Come back, he said simply. Walking back to the community room, the city seemed different somehow, not less broken but less lonely. Walt looked up when I came in. Well, I shrugged, tossing the meeting flyer onto the table. Might go again. Walt just nodded, a small smile playing at the edges of his mouth. I fell onto the couch, the notebook still open beside me. Tonight, I wrote 2 words. Still here. The next few days blurred together. Mornings meant hauling crates, scraping gum off sidewalks, fixing leaky faucets, whatever odd jobs Walt could scrounge up. Afternoons meant writing, forcing the jagged mess inside me onto paper. Evenings meant meetings, sitting in those battered circles, learning to listen before I ever dared to speak. You can't fix what you won't face, Walt said once, as we patched a broken window with duct tape and plywood. One night, walking back from a meeting, Walt pulled 2 steaming cups of coffee from a vendor cart and handed me one. You're still mad, he said casually. I'm not mad, I lied. Sure you are. You're mad you failed. Mad nobody came to save you. Mad the world kept spinning. I stared into the coffee, feeling the truth of its sting. You think you're owed a rescue? He asked. No, I muttered. I just thought it wouldn't end like this. Walt nodded, like he'd heard that 100 times. Everybody thinks they're the exception, he said. Then life beats you raw, and you find out you're not. I shoved my hands into my jacket pockets, teeth grinding. So what then? Just give up? Hell no, Walt barked. You get back up, but not the same. Smarter, meaner, grateful. Back at the community room, Walt set a battered old radio on the table. He fiddled with the dials until a crackly blues station filled the air. Music helps, he said simply. I lay on the couch that night, the music low in the background, the notebook on my chest. I wrote more. Not just I'm lost or still here. Whole sentences. Ugly, painful truths. I hurt people who loved me. I lied because I was scared. I wanted to be someone else. Each word felt like scraping rust off my bones. Late one night, Walt caught me staring at the ceiling, notebook open but untouched. You ready for something harder? He asked. Harder than this? He smiled grimly. Facing yourself is just the first step. Next, you gotta start giving back. Give back what? I've got nothing. Walt shook his head. You've got time. You've got ears. You've got hands. Start there. He dropped a flyer on my chest. Saturday morning soup kitchen volunteers needed. I groaned. Don't want to, I said. Doesn't matter, Walt said, heading for his chair. Show up anyway. I closed my eyes, wishing I could disappear into the couch. But Saturday morning found me standing behind a plastic folding table, ladling watery soup into chipped bowls for a line of tired, hollow-eyed people. Smile, an old woman in a wheelchair said as she passed. You look like someone stole your last dollar. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real, sharp, sudden laugh. Walt, across the room, caught my eye and nodded once. Brick by brick. The weeks piled on, one after the other. Some days were easier. Some dragged like a ball and chain. But I kept showing up to the meetings, to the jobs Walt lined up, to the soup kitchen. Consistency beats talent, Walt said once, watching me scrub graffiti off a bus stop. Every time. One afternoon, after another round of scut work, Walt handed me an envelope. Job interview, he said. I froze. I'm not ready. He snorted. You're never ready. Go anyway. Inside the envelope was an address for a moving company 2 towns over. Manual labor. Long hours. Low pay. But a job. I wore my cleanest shirt, combed my hair with my fingers in a cracked bathroom mirror, and made the trek. The foreman was a heavy-set guy with a buzz cut and a permanent scowl. You got experience? He barked. No, sir. But I'm a hard worker. He looked me up and down like he could see every mistake I'd ever made. Show up tomorrow. 6 a.m. Don't be late. I stumbled out of there feeling like I could fly. Back at the community room, I found Walt repairing a busted heater with duct tape and curses. Well, he asked without looking up. I got it, I said, breathless. He grunted. Of course you did. You don't sound surprised. I'm not, Walt said, tightening a strip of tape. I'm just waiting to see if you keep it. The first day on the job nearly killed me. Heavy furniture. Narrow stairs. Uncooperative clients. By noon, my back screamed and my hands were raw. You quitting? One of the older guys joked during lunch. I shook my head, too tired to speak. After the shift, I dragged myself back to the community room and collapsed. Walt handed me an ice pack without a word. As the weeks turned into months, something inside me started to shift. The notebook filled up not just with pain now, but with small victories. Didn't give up today. Made someone laugh. Kept my word. One night, Walt sat down across from me with 2 mugs of coffee. You know, he said, I wasn't much older than you when I lost everything. I looked up, surprised. Walt never talked about himself. What happened? I asked. He shrugged. Bad choices. Worse pride. Lost my wife. My kids. He stared into his coffee like he could see the past swirling there. Took me years to stop hating myself. Longer to start fixing what I could. Did you? I asked. Fix it. He smiled sadly. Some of it. Some you just learned to carry. The radio crackled in the background, a slow blues song filling the silence between us. You're doing good, Chris, he said finally. Don't stop now. For the first time, I believed him. Spring crept into the city without fanfare. One morning, I woke to find the boarded windows lit by real sunlight instead of the sickly flicker of street lamps. You ever think about moving out of here? Walt asked one night after dinner, fiddling with a busted radio dial. I can't afford it yet, I said, avoiding his eyes. I didn't say today. I said think about it. I shrugged. Time's coming, Walt said, setting the radio aside. You can't stay in the waiting room forever. The words rattled around inside me. That night, I dreamed about apartments with real walls and kitchens that smelled like coffee, not mildew. A few days later, at work, the foreman pulled me aside. You got a driver's license? He asked. Yeah, I said, heart pounding. Good. We're short a truck driver Saturday. You up for it? Absolutely. He tossed me a clipboard. Don't wreck my truck. That Saturday, gripping the steering wheel of the battered moving truck, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in years, pride. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't even close. But I was moving forward inch by stubborn inch. After the shift, I cashed my paycheck, my first real one in what felt like forever, and stood outside the bank holding the envelope like it might vanish. Back at the community room, I found Walt in his usual chair, carving something into a block of wood. "Got something for you," I said. I handed him a cheap, greasy bag from the burger joint down the block. "What's this?" "Dinner. My treat." He pulled out the burger, raised an eyebrow, and smiled. "Look at you," he said. "High roller." We ate in companionable silence. Later that night, as I scribbled in my notebook, Walt nodded at me. "You remember the first thing you wrote?" he asked. "Yeah. I am lost. What would you write now?" I thought about it for a long time. Finally, I wrote, "I'm finding my way." Walt smiled like he'd been waiting all along. The days kept moving, and so did I. With every paycheck, I tucked a little away in a battered coffee can under my bunk. Walt noticed but never said a word. I think he understood dreams are fragile things, and sometimes you protect them best by keeping them secret. One rainy Thursday, Walt didn't meet me at the door like he usually did. The place was quieter than normal, too still. I found him sitting in the back room, staring at a photo so worn the edges curled inward. "Everything all right?" I asked. He folded the photo carefully and slipped it into his jacket. "Just ghosts," he said. It hit me then how much older Walt really was. I had always seen him as tough, indestructible. But he was tired. His hands shook slightly when he picked up his coffee. "You need anything?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, voice rough. "I need to know you'll keep going. Even when I'm not around to nag you." I sat down across from him, heart thudding. "You leaving?" He chuckled. "Not today, but someday. That's life, kid." We sat there for a long time, listening to the rain beat against the roof. After a while, Walt reached into his jacket and pulled out a second photo. This one was of him, younger, standing with two boys about my age. "My sons," he said. He didn't say more. He didn't have to. The pain in his voice told the story. "You ever find him?" I asked softly. "Tried," he said. "Too late." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded. Walt clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Don't waste it, Chris. The second chance. The people who believe in you. Even if it's just one stubborn old bastard like me." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the boarded window, watching the city lights shimmer through the rain. In my notebook I wrote a new line. "I am not alone." The words scared me. They also set me free. Saturday after work I went apartment hunting. Cheap places, mostly studio walk-ups, dingy basement flats, but each one was a step toward something bigger. When I found a tiny place above a laundromat, barely bigger than the community room, I signed the lease with shaking hands. The day I moved out, Walt stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You sure about this?" he asked. "Nope," I said, grinning. "Good," he said. "Means you're paying attention." I loaded the last bag into the truck, turned to face him. "Thank you," I said. Walt pulled me into a rough hug, thumping my back. "Make me proud, kid." "I will." As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror, standing under the flickering porch light, fading into the mist. And for the first time, the road ahead didn't scare me. Called me home. The new apartment smelled like bleach and dust. I dropped my duffel on the cracked linoleum floor and just stood there for a while, listening to the pipes rattle inside the walls. It wasn't much. A mattress on the floor, a second-hand table I'd hauled up 2 flights of narrow stairs, a tiny kitchen with a single burner that barely worked. But it was mine. The first night, I sat at the window with a cup of instant coffee, watching the traffic crawl past below. No TV, no distractions. Just the soft hum of the city breathing around me. It hit me, how much noise I used to cram into my life, just to drown out the silence. Now, the silence didn't scare me. Felt like space. Space to rebuild. The days became a steady rhythm. Work, meetings, volunteering. Walt would call sometimes, leaving gruff voicemails like, "Hope you're not screwing up," or "Eat something green once in a while." I always called him back. One evening, after a long shift, I came home to find a package propped against my door. No name, just my address scrawled in Walt's messy handwriting. Inside was a brand new notebook, heavy leather cover, thick pages. Taped to the front was a note. "For the next chapter, keep writing, Chris." I sat down on the floor, running my fingers over the cover. Later that night, under the cracked ceiling and the hum of the city below, I opened to the first page and wrote, "I am building a life." Weeks passed. Summer pressed into the city like a slow, heavy tide. One afternoon, as I was unloading boxes from the truck, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice. Then something in my gut told me to answer. "Hello, Chris?" A woman's voice said. "This is Maria. I'm a nurse at St. Joseph's." My heart dropped into my stomach. "It's Walt," she said gently. "He's asking for you." I dropped everything, left the truck half unloaded, jogged 6 blocks to catch a bus. At the hospital, everything smelled like disinfectant and fear. They led me to a small, dim room. Walt lay there, smaller somehow, wires snaking into his arms, machines beeping steadily beside him. He cracked one eye open when he heard me. "Took you long enough," he rasped. I laughed through the lump in my throat and pulled a chair close. "I'm here," I said. He squeezed my hand with surprising strength. "Good," he said. "Listen up, kid. Not much time." I shook my head, but he waved me off. "Doesn't matter. You gotta hear this." He took a shallow breath, voice rough but steady. "You kept going. Even when it was ugly. Even when you didn't believe you could. You did that. Not me. Not luck. You." Tears blurred my vision. "Don't you ever forget," Walt said. "You earned your life. Brick by brick." He coughed, wincing. "Promise me," he whispered. "Promise you what?" I asked, voice breaking. "You'll find someone lost. Help em. Same way." I squeezed his hand tighter. "I promise." His breathing slowed. His fingers relaxed in mine. Walt smiled, a small, tired smile, and closed his eyes. The machines kept beeping, soft and steady. But I knew. Walt had gone home. The next morning, I went back to the community room. The place felt hollow without him. I sat in his old chair, the battered radio still tuned to some crackly blues station. I turned it up and closed my eyes, letting the music fill the silence. In my new notebook, I wrote, "I will build and I will carry others. Brick by brick,